Mr. Chair, trust between law enforcement and the public that they are sworn to protect is not just important but essential to safe, collaborative, and constitutional community policing. Trust promotes healthy relationships and interactions that are in the best interest of both the public and the police. Unfortunately, the public's trust in law enforcement has eroded in many communities across the country, including my own. The federal government needs to make targeted investments to ensure that law enforcement has the tools to rebuild and strengthen that trust, which is the cornerstone of successful policing. That is why I am so proud to introduce this bipartisan amendment, along with my colleagues, Congressman Murphy and Congressman Blumenauer, to add $2 million to the Mentally III Offender Treatment and Crime Reduction Act programs. These programs provide a broad range of services, including crisis intervention training for state and local law enforcement agencies to identify and improve responses to people with mental illnesses and substance abuse issues. Crisis intervention training can help prevent injuries to officers, de-escalate potentially dangerous situations, and alleviate harm to the person in crisis. Interactions the mentally ill and law enforcement too often end in tragedy. Since the beginning of the year, 385 people have been shot and killed by police, and about a quarter of these individuals have been identified as mentally ill. The more training we can provide law enforcement to improve their skills to interact with the public, the more likely crises will be resolved peacefully. And the more nonviolent, peaceful interactions police have with the public, the more we can strengthen trust between police and the public that they are sworn to protect. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Texas wish to rise in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, I'd seek unanimous consent to claim the time in opposition, but I'm not opposed to the gentlelady's amendment. It's a good amendment, and we support it.
Gentleman is recognized without objection.
Thank you. And at this time, if I could yield to my good friend and colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Murphy.
Gentleman is recognized.
I thank the chairman, and I also thank Representative Grisham for this thoughtful amendment we're working on together, which will put $2 million towards crisis intervention training for state and local law enforcement, and also work towards substance abuse treatment and mental health courts. In the 1950s, this country had 550,000 psychiatric hospital beds for the population of 150 million. Now, with a population twice that size, we only have 40,000 psychiatric hospital beds. So what happened? Some people got better, but sadly, what we ended up with is huge increases in homelessness, visits to emergency rooms. Last year in this country, there was 40,000 suicides and 1 million suicide attempts. And with this critical bed shortage, we have many people who end up committing crimes. And of the 2.4 million incarcerated Americans, about half of them, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, are estimated to have a mental health condition. That's 64% in our county and local jails, 56% in state, and 45% of federal prisoners. By comparison, 35,000 patients with severe mental illness in state psychiatric hospitals. And according to a report from April 2014, the number of persons and mentally ill persons in prisons is 10 times higher than that in psychiatric hospitals. The largest jails in the country, Cook County in Illinois, Los Angeles and New York, and Los Angeles and New York, have 11,000 prisoners combined with serious mental illness. Now that's over twice as large as the 3 largest state-run mental hospitals. And mentally ill inmates are twice as likely to be charged with rule violation when incarcerated, and actually remain in prison 4 times longer than a non-mentally ill person with the same original crime. And what happens then? Solitary confinement, tasered, and then when they're discharged, they repeat the cycle in the revolving door. What we need to make sure we're doing is deal with public safety, make sure there's restitution to the community for what has happened. But the key is provide help for those with serious mental illness. It is not right for our country to continue to say things like it is not illegal to be crazy. Our courts and systems that do not understand mental illness continue to say that. But to them I say, it isn't just an issue if someone has a right to be mentally ill. They have a right to be well. And what we need to do is stop this revolving door of having someone who is hallucinating and delusional, and we wait until they commit a crime or a threat to public safety instead of intervening earlier. We need mental health courts. We need ways that policemen can intervene early to help persons. And we need evidence-based initiatives to fix our broken mental health system in America. I know that in our own court in Allegheny County, they saw a nearly 38% reduction in recidivism when they used mental health courts. This is compassion. This is the right thing to do, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes, Mr. Chair, to the gentleman from Oregon, Congressman Blumenauer.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate the gentlelady's courtesy and her leadership on this. And I appreciate my good friend from Pennsylvania and his eloquence and his tireless championship in this area. The fact is that we have a broken system that does not meet the needs of people with mental illness, that it places an undue burden on law enforcement, and his words about people having a right to be well really resonates with me, because we have seen in all our communities situations that escalate because we don't have the proper response, we don't have the proper training, we don't have the proper resources, where people get worse. It's not just that it costs more money, but the pain to the individuals, to their families, and ultimately, since virtually all of these people are released, but released in a more damaged situation, they're worse, they're a greater risk to themselves and society, and the cycle continues. There is no doubt in my mind that if we were able to properly account for the costs and consequences of the current non-system, that there would be far more resources saved, treating them humanely and effectively, giving the police and the community the resources they need that will more than pay for itself. This is an important step for the federal government to be a better partner. I appreciate the gentlelady's leadership. I appreciate my friend Mr. Murphy from Pennsylvania, looking forward to working with him on other items. And I respectfully request that our colleagues not just support this, but take it to heart, because we can make a difference on so many different levels. Thank you, and I yield.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. From Texas, wish to reserve.
Yeah. I will, if I could, we need to have one more recorded vote on this. I support the amendment and would encourage members to support it. Would you be willing to do a recorded vote on this?
We're going to seek a recorded vote. We're all in agreement, but for our purposes, we want to have a vote on this.
Well,
but I want to also, if you would yield for it, so I could just
yes,
make a quick comment. I was at the, on behalf of our country, I attended the Healthy Brain, Healthy Europe conference in Ireland, and their estimate in these 28 EU countries was that some 36% of the population had some type of mental health challenge. And they deal with it much more openly and without the stigma that sometimes we attach here in our country to mental health challenges. I want to thank my colleague from Pennsylvania for his extraordinary leadership on this issue, and I thank the gentlelady for offering us. We will support this and ask for a recorded vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman from Texas, wish to reserve.
Yield back. Encourage members to support the amendment.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized.
I yield the balance of my time and want to encourage all members to vote in favor of this amendment, and want to thank my colleagues for working so diligently on this very important improvement to public safety and police training.
The question is on the amendment.